Halo Reach is one of my personal favourite games from the Halo series. Because I just did another playthrough of Reach recently, and because I also just can't stop talking about Halo, let's do another difficulty ranking video. If you didn't see my previous one, it's the same rules as last time. We're basing everything off of the legendary difficulty as well as the intended paths you're supposed to take. At our first spot, fittingly, we've got the first level of the game, Winter Contingency. Winter Contingency serves as an introduction to the Covenant on Reach, and because of that, most of its encounters are pretty mild in terms of difficulty. Majority of the enemies here are of the low-ranking baby variety that put up less of a fight than my dad did when we used to 1v1 on Sidewinder back in the day. There are a few tougher enemies like this encounter with the elites where you've got a few ultras and mages and even a general, and then later in the level where you've got a couple stronger enemies in a higher density. These encounters can be a bit hard, but you've also got 4 other noble team members who are pretty good at soaking up plasma and taking aggro away from you. More or less, Winter Contingency is a soft introduction to the game and its mechanics. Next up, we've got Truth and Reconciliation, Nightfall. There's nothing too difficult going on in this mission. There's a decent amount of encounters with some tougher elites, but I don't know, I've just never really struggled at any point during Nightfall. The part where you hold out with the local militia is probably the toughest section. I think there's around 3 waves consisting of 1 or 2 dropships each. The fact that you're placed in the center and have enemies push you from different angles definitely adds to the difficulty, but you're also given a stash of DMR, sniper and rocket ammo which helps out a lot. You'd think the powerhouse part right after would also be kinda tough. There's a fair few ultras and another general and a pair of hunters, but again, I've just never really found it that difficult. You'll find a lot of concussion rifle ammo and a plasma launcher, so you've got plenty of firepower to take out the hunters and anything else that gets in your way. Number 7, Oni Sword Base. I think Oni Sword Base is a pretty great level and offers a ton of variety. Right off the bat, we've got a high density encounter consisting of grunts, jackals and elites. It's nothing too bad, but the large volume of enemies can lead to you getting caught off guard from different directions. Right after that, we've got our first vehicle area. There's 2 reasons why I find this part kind of hard. Firstly, on Legendary, enemy vehicles do a lot of damage and are very accurate. And B, the bumfuck AI teammates you're given. You're given the choice between either driving the Warthog yourself or letting the AI drive and you take the gun, both of which is a losing strategy. The 2 locations you visit have some strong and aggressive foes, both on foot and in vehicles. Once done with the vehicle section, you've got a hunter encounter which I do find pretty tough. The hunters in Reach are basically mini bosses in themselves, and I feel like this encounter doesn't have many power weapons nearby, so you have to resort to getting up close and personal, which I'm sure you all know how that usually ends. The fight in Sword Base can be pretty chaotic at times, but take your time clearing out each room and you'll be fine. Number 6, New Alexandria. Let's start with the hospital. As you work your way down, there's nothing we haven't seen before, mainly just grunts and jackals. When you reach the bottom, you're faced with a large pack of brutes. This encounter is in a pretty large room, so precision rifles are most effective here. The thing is, if you're low on precision ammo, this room becomes all the more difficult. This is made even worse when the jetpack elites show up. The amount that they squirm around means a plasma rifle is almost never going to hit them at range, even though their plasma rifles will melt you from across the room. There is some DMR ammo tucked away here, but you'll still want to play carefully as the elites do a ton of damage. After our shift at the hospital, it's time to hit the club. Like I mentioned just before, Reach's hunters are pretty challenging and there's 4 of them? What is this, Halo Combat Evolved? Honestly, I don't know if you're supposed to actually take out all 4 hunters, but as soon as you destroy the jammer, Cat just tells you good job and return to your falcon. So, I don't know, job well done, I guess. Good luck, guys. The last thing I'll mention is the random events you get between main objectives. As far as I can remember, all of them are pretty straightforward and I don't recall struggling with any of them. Oh yeah, and then there's this 3rd objective where there's no enemies anywhere. I don't know, I think Bungie forgot to add them in or something. Number 5, the package. Or for my French viewers, Les Packages. The first half of Les Package is pretty easy. You've got the Halo Reach tank, which is an absolute beast. You can still die in an instant, especially by these fuel rod turrets or the ghosts and the revenants, but if you play it safe and slow, there's not too much that can kill you. The thing that's interesting about the package is the lack of fodder enemies compared to previous levels. Most encounters are made up of elites of all kinds of rankings, brutes, and hunters. Of course, there are still fodder enemies present, but it just feels like there's way less compared to the other enemy types. The holdout in front of Halsey's lab is a real test of endurance. It's about 15 to 20 minutes of holding out against increasingly difficult Covenant forces. You have a decent amount of ammo and weapons, but you'll want to be smart with your power weapon usage to ensure that you're taking out the stronger enemies efficiently. You also need to be aware of your surroundings, as brutes and elites will love to sneak up around the left flank and catch you off guard. Number 4, Tip of the Spear. Tip of the Spear introduces one of the hardest mechanics in the game, Cat's driving. It also features the second hardest mechanic in the game, My driving. Right off the bat, you've got a firefight where you're being pelted constantly with concussion rifles and fuel rod turrets. Most encounters have more higher ranking enemies, which just generally makes them tougher than previous story levels. Both AA guns are pretty heavily fortified and pose a decent challenge in taking them out. Now, I do know you can shoot them from afar, but I'd argue that most people don't know that and fight their way into the center to destroy it. You also only have Cat with you from Noble Team, and most of the time she's off doing God knows what, so enemies will all be targeting their aggro towards you. There's a couple of Wraith encounters that you're forced to take out to progress, and the second AA gun is probably the hardest fight at this point in the game. There's a Wraith, a pair of Hunters, a couple Ghosts, drones, and some other enemies scattered throughout. It's not overly difficult, but it's definitely a step up in difficulty from the aforementioned levels. Ironically, the final Spire part is the easiest of the whole level in my opinion, and if you're anything like me and played Invasion on Spire every day after school, you're basically a pro at this part. At number 3, we've got Exodus. Exodus is where the brutes make their Reach appearance. Oh, and look, they brought cheese. Reach's brutes aren't as difficult as the elites, but they're always in much higher numbers, so while they're not as hard to kill, there's always more of them to fight at once. A lot of the encounters in Exodus involve you fighting uphill, and the brutes armed with concussion rifles and fuel rods will just rain down shit on you endlessly. Not to mention that there's a bunch of other fodder enemies throughout that will distract you as you fight aforementioned brutes. The final beach fight is probably the hardest of an overall tough level. There's a good amount of brutes and brute chieftains guarding both objectives, and if that wasn't enough, there's also a couple wraiths hanging out in the area that love to occasionally bomb you when you aren't paying attention. After activating both missile batteries, you've got to push the main building, which has a lot more strong enemies, and by this point you're probably out of ammo for your power weapons and are now relying on whatever you can to find to finish the job. Long Night of Solace? More like Long Night of I want to kill myself. Most of you who have played through Reach on Legendary have probably experienced the misery which is the Space Saber section. Specifically on the Master Chief Collection, the tick rate has been increased from 30 to 60 from the original game, which has also increased the enemy aggression, causing the AI to react and shoot quicker. The enemy Seraphs are so quick to shoot you and do so much damage it can sometimes feel like you're completely helpless. Sticking your head out for even a few seconds can be a death wish. In my experience, the maneuvers you can do with the Saber don't really do much in helping survivability, and I find the only viable strategy is hiding behind some space debris and poking out your head occasionally to take them out one by one. Even then, sometimes the Seraphs will get a little bit cheeky and chase you into your hiding spot. Aside from the misery that is the Saber section, the beginning of the level has a couple elite ultras, but you've also got 3 other Noble team members and it's pretty short and straightforward. The Covenant carrier interior has some higher ranking elites, and there's a couple sections of which, if you're not familiar with the spawns, you can get completely caught off guard. It also features some more high density gunfights across the multiple rooms that you progress through within the Covenant carrier. And at number 1 we've got Lone Wolf. Lone Wolf is literally impossible to beat and therefore is the hardest level in the entire series. I'm joking. At number 1 we've got Pillar of Autumn. I had you there for a second, didn't I? This mission really feels like a suicide sprint to get to the Pillar of Autumn, and the Covenant are putting up everything they can to stop you. The opening gunfight and mongoose run is nothing out of the ordinary on the difficulty scale. Once you get off the mongoose, you've got a large pack of brutes and a wraith to deal with, but it's not too bad as you should have grabbed rockets from earlier. Once you get into the cave, you're sprung by a bunch of drones which essentially serve as a CSGO aim trainer on crack. I swear these guys are like literally impossible to hit when they're moving. After you've finished your aim training, we're back to playing Invasion, this time on Boneyard, and the Covenant really don't want you stealing their core. The elites on the front line are fairly strong and aggressive. Progress further and you've got some turrets and a couple ghosts to deal with, as well as a ton of grunts. Once you're inside the main building, be careful of the dual-wielding elites as they can strip your shields and health in a matter of seconds. Okay, now remember when I said how hard Reach's hunters are? Well, I think this is their hardest encounter. I don't even know what Bungie expects you to kill them with. Like, my brother in Christ, you gave me an assault rifle and a shotgun. That's like the two worst guns in this entire game. The room right after the hunters is pretty standard. You're on the lower ground, so you've got a bit of a disadvantage, and there's also an invisible sword elite who I literally forget about every single time I play this level. And then we get to the final holdout section, which is probably the hardest of this entire campaign. There's constant waves of brutes, jackals, and grunts, and they're all pretty aggressive. There's not a ton of cover, and the weapons that you're given range from average to just poo-poo terrible. For any of you who are struggling with this final holdout section, there is actually a secret weapon stash that has extra guns and ammo and... oh, never mind. Bungie really nailed the atmosphere and the vibe of this level, as it really does feel like one giant push to save humanity while you're fighting against every Covenant force they can throw at you. And that's my ranking of Halo Reach's levels based off of their difficulty. If you did enjoy the video, a like and subscribe is super appreciated. And let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I genuinely do enjoy hearing what you guys have to say. Also, why not check out my Lone Wolf video that I made a couple weeks back? I'll leave a link for it on screen. And of course, thank you so much for watching.